So in today's video, I'm going to talk about how to succeed as an assistant professor at a typical research university. And essentially, though I will be focusing on research universities, you can get a lot of takeaways for teaching focused schools also. So let's look at the three aspects which are very important for a typical assistant professor or for all faculty in general, and these are research, teaching, and service. So in a typical research university, research is priority 1, teaching is priority 2, and service is priority 3. And in a teaching focused school, teaching becomes priority 1 and research becomes priority 2 and service becomes priority 3. Now, what are research universities? Research universities are essentially universities which grant PhDs, and depending on the proportion of PhDs granted by the university relative to the rest of the population of UG students and master students, you can classify a university as more intensely focused on research or focus on the larger aspects of the problem. Now, in a typical teaching university, you essentially have a bachelor's degree and sometimes you may have a master's degree, and generally you do not have a PhD degree, because a PhD degree is a degree by research and would require that the faculty spend a lot of his time in doing research. Now, when most students think about professors, they think about teaching, but the reality is that most professors spend a lot of time in doing research, and they typically spend this time in writing journal papers, formulating research problems, soliciting grants from institutions by writing research proposals, guiding PhD and master's degree students, going to conferences, presenting their work, developing presentations, and so on. So I would say as much as 50% of the time of a typical professor would go in research, about 30% would go in teaching, and maybe 20% would go in service, and this would be varying slightly depending on the institution and the person. Now, what is the most important thing to keep in mind for a faculty is that they need to have a coherent research program. And this research program is typically outlined in the research statement which you have submitted when you applied to the university. And this research statement should give 1 to 3 research problems which you are going to tackle in the next 5 years or so. Now, the first of these research problems is something which you think will make a big impact on the field, and this problem should use your PhD or postdoc background and then take it further to the next level. A secondary and tertiary problems could be problems which are based on your PhD or postdoctoral work and extensions or tangential deviations from these work. So make sure that your larger problem does not continue with your PhD or postdoc work, but deviates from these and explores some new area, while of course using all the skills which you have learned in your previous work. Now, what is the importance given to different aspects of research and teaching? So to do that, let us go back to the CV and look at it more carefully, which is the most important academic document. Now, if you look at a CV, it is essentially structured on the principle of most competitive things come first and least competitive things come at the end. So you will notice in a typical CV, people will put their university first. So generally it is expected that you are from a top research university and it was very difficult to get into this university. Then you have your journal publications. Of course, journal publications are very difficult and some journals have rejection rates of up to 95%. Also, research grants are very important and these go here. So research grants basically require a high amount of work in terms of proposal writing, and again these grants also come with high rejection rates. So there are institutions where you may have to write 10 proposals to get one proposal through, so that is a pretty high rate of rejection. So these are some of the facts which are very competitive, and typically these are given the maximum importance in the typical research university. Now, what about teaching? Teaching, of course, is extremely important because this is where you are training the next generation of students. And also you are looking out for prospective students to be part of your bachelor's degree projects, master's degree projects, and even PhD students. Also, teaching typically helps you in becoming a better researcher because there is a synergy between teaching and research. And as your fundamentals become better, you will find that your teaching and research will both become better. Now, Why is teaching not given so much importance is that because teaching is fundamentally non-competitive. And this happens because typically when you join a university, you are told to teach a particular class. And you have to teach this class. It's not that 10 more people are lining up and competing with you to teach this class once you have already joined the university. So that is why teaching is relegated to a later portion of the CV. While this may be so, let me give you some insights about how you can improve your teaching. Now, typically neophyte researchers will spend a lot of time going through material and will try to cover a vast amount of material in their classes. And after some time, they understand that the students are not able to digest all this material. And as the years go by, they progressively reduce the material they cover in the class, they focus more on the fundamentals, and they focus on testing the students. So they give more attention to homework, to the examinations, to the midterm, to quizzes, to pop quizzes, to final exams, projects, and so on. So again, it's very important to make sure that the students actually grasp the content which is taught to them, and you should not spend all your time in just going through the material and talking to yourself. Now, I find that the classical way of teaching, which was using blackboards or whiteboards, essentially slows you down, and so it's less difficult to cover a plethora of material in such situations, and the student is able to keep pace with the class. If you use slides, you have to be careful because you may rush through a lot of material, and what may happen is the student may get a superficial view of the subject, and when you actually give them problems to solve, you will find that they have not understood the various concepts. So again, the closure of the loop is very important in terms of teaching, and this you have to do by making sure that the students are actually doing well in the examinations and so on. I also recommend that you try to grade as much of the student material yourself if your class is not too large, because this will give you a good feedback in terms of how the students are actually doing. And this is especially important for the examination papers, because if you find that you have done a huge amount of work in teaching and the students are not able to do basic problems in the class, then you know that somewhere your teaching is remiss and you need to make some changes. Maybe you need to whittle down on the amount of things you teach in the class and focus on fewer concepts. Now, when we come to the third part, which is surveys, here I would say that do some surveys because it's necessary, and surveys can be done to the department, to the university, and to the profession. So all these three are important, and you may have to do things based on who calls you. Professional service is of course very useful because if you are working for a society such as IEEE, then you not only develop a network here, but you also work on things which are of current interest to you in terms of profession. Now, as far as department and university service goes, try to link this service to your research expertise. So if you are a computer science person and you are asked to serve, then try to serve on a committee of computer security or the computer infrastructure in the university, so that you can bring in your skills into this particular situation. Similarly, if you are a psychology person, you can work on mental health issues in the university which affect the students. If you are a sociology person, you can work on gender and race related issues. In some of these situations, you can actually try to bring in your research into the problem and to see if you can prototype some issues here. For example, if you are working on computer security, you may have developed some new paradigms which can be used in the university computer setting, and these would be a good way to prototype these issues. Now, make sure that you do not do too much service. So again, in cases where you are asked to do surveys on things which are not directly of relevance to you, try to say no now and then, but of course do not say no all the time, because then you will be branded as a problem case. Now, beside that, I find a couple of things very useful. One of these is to establish your absence, and this means that you should spend some time somewhere else, like in the libraries, like in cafe, like in the libraries or institutions which are different than yours, and this time can be used to work on research papers, to read the literature, to write review papers and books and so on, because it's very difficult to get a lot of work done in your own room in the department, because you will be disturbed by students every now and then, but more likely you will be disturbed by your fellow colleagues who will want to chat with you about the different aspects of the department and the university politics. And these discussions are kind of useless when you are an assistant professor, because as I mentioned before, you are still a guest in this university, and so you do not need to be bothered at this time by a lot of the political issues. Leave it to the senior faculty to do these things. Finally, I would say that make sure that you are always global, so don't get too bogged down at the university level and at the state level which you are in, or at the city level. You should realize that as far as academia is concerned, it is completely global. Science, technology, various professions are global, and therefore present your papers at different conferences throughout the world, write in journals throughout the world, develop a network of people throughout the world, and this will also help you in terms of getting referees from people, because as I have mentioned before, you may need 10 or more referees to look at your promotion case, not only at the point when you go for associate professor, but also when you go for full professor or you apply to different fellowships and so on. And in case it happens that you do not wish to continue in your current institution, this network will help you to get a job in a different institution. So that is something to keep in mind, that you do not want to put all your eggs in the university basket. So again, these were some ideas I had for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned to my channel for more videos on such topics. Thank you very much.